Good morning, and welcome to the webcast. This is our final session for the virtual 2020 Building Opportunity Conference from Moss Adams, providing insight into current challenges facing companies operating in the built world. Over the span of this conference, we've looked at topics such as how COVID-19 is shaping the landscape of cities and infrastructure, economic impacts of newly passed bills, business planning in an election year, and post-election tax planning and considerations. For more information on each of these previously covered sessions, please visit the links provided in your resources widget here on On24, as well as on mossadams.com. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us. We're pleased to present another in our ongoing series of continuing professional education webcasts to help companies and individuals conquer challenges as they plan for what's next. Our presentation will start in a few moments. Before we begin, here are a few things to keep in mind. You can customize how you both view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can also adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons, each relating to a different aspect of our session. You can download the group attendance sheet and a PDF copy of today's slides from the slide deck and handouts widget to the right of the slide view. You can ask our presenter questions during the webcast by typing a question in the Q&A window below the slide view and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions during the presentation or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty during today's presentation, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. Today's session will offer you 1 CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the requirements as specified by the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. You must attend at least 50 minutes of the session and respond to at least 75% of the polling questions, which we'll ask throughout today's presentation. To respond to a poll, click the button next to your answer. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon in the CPE Progress widget to open a PDF file that you can save to your computer. Don't worry if you can't download your PDF certificate today. We'll email a copy to you in 2 weeks. If you're attending this webcast in a group, you must complete our attendance sheet to receive CPE credit. The attendance sheet is available in the slide deck and handouts widget. Please have all group members sign it and send only 1 sheet per group. Also note that CPE credit can be awarded only to participants registered as themselves and isn't available to participants who view the on-demand version. As a reminder, the presentation you're about to see isn't legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
Thank you. And now, let's get to our session this morning, 2021 Planning Strategies for Construction and Real Estate. For some introductory remarks, I'd like to introduce Aaron Falk, Partner and National Practice Leader for Hospitality here at Moss Adams. Aaron, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Gerald. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to our friends viewing on the East Coast. Really excited that you've joined us today for our final Building Opportunities virtual conference presentation. We've got a great group of speakers lined up today, and I'll go over the agenda here in just a minute. If you've stuck with us for all of our presentations so far, we're really pleased that you did. If you missed anything, we've got our on-demand queue on our website. Please feel free to go take a look at some of the other content you might have missed as we've gone through the Building Opportunities Conference. Today's agenda, we're going to start off with the state and gift tax planning. Jode Beauvais is our leader there. Jode, maybe you could give us a quick introduction.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Jode Beauvais, I'm a partner here at the firm, and I lead our individual and family national practice for the firm. I've been practicing in that space for most of my career, and I look forward to sharing some estate planning ideas with you today.
Thanks, Jody. Up next, we'll talk a little bit about cybersecurity. We've got Francis Tam.
Thank you for the introduction. Yes, this is Francis. I'm a partner with the firm, and I've been doing this for the last 28 years. I am a service line leader of cybersecurity, so I have a group of people that I call them ethical hackers. So this is a very interesting topic, especially during this time of the pandemic when a lot of people are working from home. So back to you.
Thanks, Francis. And up next will be Glenn Wattum talking about cash flow budgeting and PPP loan liabilities. Glenn?
Thanks, Aaron. Everybody, I am a partner primarily focusing in the construction and real estate space. Spent a lot of time with this general consulting as well as focusing on tax, and have spent the past few months really on the PPP loans. I'm looking forward to chatting with you up here in the near future here. Thanks.
And I'm Aaron Falk, everybody. I'm the National Practice Leader for Hospitality. Spend most of my time working on hospitality, construction, and real estate clients. Again, really excited that you joined us. The way that this format will work today, each group or each person will present about 10 to 15 minutes on their topic, and then we'll take some question and answers that you might have. So if you have any questions, things that you want to know more about, please type those in the Q&A box, and I'll throw those out to either Jody, Francis, or Glenn. I'll be your moderator today. And with that, let's get started. First up, we'll have a polling question. So if you're here for CPE, first of 4 polling questions up on the screen now. Question there is, what are you most interested in hearing about as it relates to estate and gift tax planning? A, how the estate law works. B, what should you know about life insurance? C, what are individuals doing to gift during life? D, how are trusts being used to manage estates and gifting? So we'll give everybody a few moments to get their question or get their submission in, and then we'll take a look at the poll results in just a minute. All right, I think everybody's just about in. 10 more seconds and we will close this poll. And you'll already be 1/3 of the way. If you've responded, you're already 1/3 of the way to getting CPE credit. All right, let's take a look at the poll results. Jody, I'll let you interpret those.
Thanks, Aaron. Good, yeah, we got a good mix of what people are looking at, but how trusts are being used is about half of you here, and I'm going to talk about that as we get going because we're seeing trusts being something that everybody is utilizing more and more as we start doing estate planning for clients. So I'm going to kick us off, and we'll jump right into the presentation here as we look at estate planning. A lot happening right now, and I wanted to just start with giving you a little bit of the lay of the land so that you have context to how the law works. So currently we have a law in place federally that is set to expire in 2025 if nothing changes, that you pay estate tax on the fair market value of all assets and liabilities that you own at the time of death. Right now you can exclude $11,580,000 in value before you have to pay that tax. So you get to take that off of your fair market value. So for an example here, let's assume you have a $40 million fair market value estate. You get to take the 11.5 out, and that leaves you with a $28 million taxable estate. The tax rate is 40%, so about $11.3 million in tax would be due at time of death. States also have an estate tax. I'm here in Washington State, so I'm illustrating that here for you. But every state's a little different. Some states don't have an estate tax, and that's an area we've been actually seeing clients paying attention to more and more and thinking about where they want to live when it comes to these sort of taxes. But in Washington here, we have an estate tax. You can only exclude $2.1 million worth of assets before you're subject to that tax. So in our same example, your estate would be paying tax on about $37 million of value. The tax rate is a graduated tax rate, the highest rate being 20%. And on an estate this size, there'd be about $7.2 million in death tax. It's a lot of money, and there's a lot of things that need to be considered when it comes to thinking about planning, but paying these sort of taxes is definitely a burden on the back end if you are not able to put your asset base in the right structure or have the liquidity to cover these taxes. So I wanted to highlight a few areas today that we're seeing, and specifically around gifting and valuations, the areas that we're seeing clients focus on here. There are numerous ways you can gift assets during life. These are three of the most common ways that we see individuals doing gifting between generations. Direct gifts from one individual to another, transferring an ownership percentage in a business, or giving a cash gift are the two most common assets that I see being gifted just directly right to another individual. Secondly, we have gifts in trust, which I mentioned. These are becoming more and more popular as a tool to manage a lot of different elements relating to transferring wealth. Trusts 20 to 30 years ago were looked at as something that only the ultra wealthy had, and they got a bad rap with comments like, I don't want my kids to be a trust fund kid and things like that. But today, trusts are widely used to effectively transfer assets efficiently and safely. So what do I mean by that? Think of a trust like a vault. A vault is very secure, it's safe and protected, and it has a lock to open it and take anything out. And as long as the items in the vault stay in there, they're secure. And so a trust is like a vault. The person who creates the trust puts assets into it. They create the codes or the locks for that trust based on what they're trying to accomplish. They can make the locks super tight and hard to get into, or they can make them easy and flexible to get into. The creator of that trust can personalize the way they want the trust to behave and the ability to pull out from the trust assets. As long as the assets stay inside the trust, they are safe from creditors, divorce, bankruptcy, etc. Trusts also have the ability to manage estate tax over a long period of time with the ability to skip generations, which is very impactful. So for example, I can create a trust for my daughter and put $5 million worth of assets into the trust. And in the trust document, I can give her the ability during her lifetime to take out $50,000 a year, but the rest stays in the trust. So upon her death, whatever is left in the trust passes on to her kids, and then the trust terminates. That's how I would outline that. And so in that example, I got $5 million out of my estate. And in addition, because the assets are in a trust, they're not part of my daughter's estate, and she will not owe any estate tax on the trust assets when she dies. The assets in the trust would only be subject to estate tax when my grandchildren inherit them, and the trust terminates, and no taxes are actually paid until they pass away. So assuming you invest $5 million and it continues to grow and appreciate, you can defer paying estate tax on a significant amount of wealth for a very long period of time when you look at transferring or skipping generations, which is a very effective tool. The third thing here is gifting to family LLCs, and this remains an effective method for managing family assets in a structured way that allows families to make good business decisions, lessen administrative burden, and allow for gifting and transfer interests utilizing discounts and valuations. A typical scenario for a family LLC starts with the patriarch who currently owns all the assets outright, and the LLC gets created, and the patriarch and the children become LLC members together. Everybody puts in a small amount of cash so that they're equal owners at the start of the LLC. But then the patriarch also contributes personal assets to the LLC, assets that they want to get out of their estate ultimately, and maybe they think are going to appreciate over time, which right away increases their ownership in that LLC. But the LLC will then obtain a valuation of the current value of all the assets in that account. And in that case, discounting is allowed simply because of this LLC structure. It's not uncommon for an LLC to get a discount off of the fair market value of 30 to 40% simply because of how it's structured and the limitations within that LLC that make the value of it not equal to the true fair market value. So to use some numbers, assume that you have assets in an LLC that are worth $10 million fair market value with a 30% discount. The discounted value is around $7 million, which would be the value used for gifting. So the patriarch in this example would gift some of his LLC ownership to his kids at that discounted valuation amount, effectively moving more wealth over time than if he'd done an outright gift of the assets to the kids, 7 million versus 10 million in this example. So with this discounting availability, I'm talking about a lot of clients look at the value of their business and this year and how COVID has impacted that value, and they're seeing some opportunity. COVID's been interesting within our client base, and some businesses are doing really well and others are not. And if you're in an industry that has had more restrictions due to COVID, your business valuation right now might be depressed. And with discounts being able to be taken on top of it, the ability to transfer business interests right now to the next generation is really very effective. The last thing I have on here is just about loans, and just that isn't so much with gifting, but the interest rate right now is so low that between family and intercompany loans with each other, you're able to really help maybe future generations get into a home, loan money to an individual who maybe wants to purchase part of a business interest, and you can do that with roughly a 0.38% interest rate right now, which is the IRS interest rate that's required when you do loans between related parties. So a very also effective way to just think about generationally helping with accumulating wealth at a lower generation versus a higher generation that's in an estate exposure situation. That's all I had, Aaron.
Great, Jody. So if I'm thinking about starting or implementing an estate plan, where do typically you see clients just begin? How do you start the process? What should I be thinking about?
Great question. Getting started is hard sometimes. When I first sit down with a new client, this is a common concern. It's overwhelming. There's too many things to think about. Where do I go? How do I get started? I don't want it to be complicated. I don't want to ruin my kids or my grandkids. And sometimes these emotional decisions are too hard to face. So we ignore and we move on to something easier and more comfortable for us. This is human nature. And please, if that's how you are feeling or have felt in the past, know that what you're feeling is normal and natural, and how almost everyone feels when they get started with estate planning. It does get easier, and the more you learn about the options that are available to you, you will start to find that it becomes less emotional, and you get a sense of control over identifying how the future of your wealth can play out, and a general peaceful accomplishment starts to take over that you're doing the best thing for you and your next generation. When we get started on estate planning, I typically ask the client to start putting together their personal balance sheet. So list out everything you own and what it's currently worth, as well as what you owe and the current balances. Next to each asset, I ask you to write out a couple words or sentences about the asset and what its goal is during your life. Is it meant for you to spend? Is it a legacy asset like a family home that you want to pass on to your kids and grandkids? Is it ownership in real estate that might generate cash flow for you right now? So you need to think about, if that's not yours, how you would supplement that. During this process, you'll naturally start to be more forward thinking, and it'll allow us to dive into thinking about options for setting up some wealth transfer strategies. It allows us to think about your cash flow needs, talk about personal financial planning to assure that you don't change your lifestyle if any gifting's done. We talk about appreciation, what might grow more than something else. Getting a good handle on your assets allows you to then move into a planning phase, where I like to help clients explore the more emotional decisions that they'll need to consider as they begin estate planning. Things like, what is fair? Should things be equal? Kids versus grandkids, business ownership when not all the kids are in the business, etc. So I encourage clients to start with that balance sheet to get started, and it definitely evolves from there and helps the planning process quite a bit.
Great. Thanks, Jody. We do have a question that came in from Jake. And it relates to the election. And his question is, how would we see the use of trust change if Joe Biden's proposed plan to decrease the state exclusion was to pass? And maybe you could even broaden that response by giving us just your kind of first week out post-election. What are you hearing from folks that are doing estate planning? What should people be thinking about?
Sure. Yeah, right. We're about a week out. And Biden did have a proposal that was posted on the Tax Policy Center website that did say that in his proposal, it would reduce that $11.5 million exemption amount down to $3.5 million. And that he would get rid of the step up in basis. And so maybe I'll explain a couple things really quick here. That right now, that $11.5 million exemption that I mentioned when we started, you have that available to you to exclude from your estate when you pass away, or you can gift it away during your life, which is what we've been talking about here with trusts and utilizing those. So right now, you can give $11.5 million away during your life, gifting, and then you won't have that on the back end when you pass away. Just whatever's left is what you get. So in his proposal, he's looking to reduce that number down to $3.5 million. So to the question of how will we utilize trusts, if that exemption amount really does decline, you obviously won't be able to put as much into trusts. And so you won't be able to do as much gifting and as much planning. So let me share a couple other things first, and then I'll give you my thoughts on what we're seeing clients do. The other thing that is in his proposal is getting rid of the step up in basis. And so what that is when you pass away, all your assets get valued at fair market value on your date of death, like I mentioned. And this becomes the marker for obviously what you owe in estate tax. But in addition, it also becomes the new basis for all these assets for whoever inherits them. So you get a step up to the fair market value equal to what the value is on the estate. And then ultimately what that plays out to be is if someone inherits an asset and it gets a stepped up basis, if they turn around and sell that asset, right, they're not going to have any income tax on the sale. That's a large benefit right now in our estate tax law that it doesn't matter if you pay any estate tax or anything, you still get that. So that's also part of his proposal. To pass both of these is going to be hard. There's a lot of things around these two parts of the estate tax law that are going to be difficult. And what we're hearing right now post-election is that getting both of those through is probably not going to happen, but we don't know, right? Will the exemption go down? Maybe. Will the step up go away? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it'll be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. But here's the real deal, right? A presidential election and legislation shouldn't drive our personal balance sheet planning. And being proactive, thinking strategically, looking ahead, coming to the honest reality that all of us someday won't be here, gets us to the logical business decision that we should put a plan in place to ensure that our family and the next generation are prepared. And whether laws change or not, if you have a healthy balance sheet and want to ensure successful succession, starting a plan is a good choice. So we do have a lot of projects going on right now with people who are in that mindset and they know that they want to do gifting. They understand what it means. And they're setting up trust structures. They're doing direct gifts. They're utilizing a portion of that exemption, the $11 million number, that's comfortable for their financial planning and all the things I've talked about. We don't probably see these laws changing January 1st, so we just want to keep people moving in the direction of making good decisions based on their family and their enterprise.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jody. And Jake, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
With that, I think we're going to pivot to our next presenter, which is cybersecurity, and we'll kick that off with a polling question. All right, I've got a scenario for you to consider. Your employee in the accounts payable department receives an email from the CFO asking them to execute a wire transfer to a new vendor. What will they do next? Think about your people. Think about your department. What do you think they'll do? Answer A, perform the task. Answer B, reply to the email and do it if they get an acknowledgement. Answer C, call the CFO. Answer D, hover over the email sender's name to verify their email address. I'll give you a quick moment to respond to the polling question. As you know, to get CP credit, you'll need to respond to 3 out of the 4. If you already got the first one, you're 33% of the way done. If you respond to this one, 66% of the way. So give you one quick moment here, and we will close that poll. All right, Gerald, let's see what the results look like. And Francis, I'll let you interpret those.
Yeah. So thanks, Aaron, for the polling question. So, yeah, a lot of you folks will call the CFO and then or D, hover over the email sender's address to verify it. Yeah, those are pretty good answers. I think if you can call the CFO directly, that would be the best. But also, you know, if you don't want to bother the CFO, the best way is to hover over that email address and, you know, see if there's the name. We can even, in our world, we can easily spoof that email address very easily. But if you hover over it, you can see the DNS name and see that is it generated from somebody you recognize. And if you're not sure, don't even respond. Send it to your IT department. They can probably do what we call a reverse DNS lookup. In other words, to look up that domain name and see if they recognize it, if it is being spoofed. So good answer. So in the cybersecurity world, as you can imagine, this is a big thing in the past how many years, and it's really, really under the spotlight in the past 8 months, 9 months because of COVID-19. A lot of you folks, well, I have some statistics in a bit. 85%, I think it's what we're talking about after COVID started. 85% of us are working remotely, whether we're working from a off-site location or working from home or working from a place that, you know, it's away from the, so to speak, the crowd, right? So this is a big thing for us because we all know that, including the hackers, including the bad guys. As we are working remotely, we have to open up certain ways of accessing information. You know, we call it ingress points. If you open up more ingress points, in other words, there will be more ways to get to the information, sensitive information. So some of the overall statistics you can see here, these are, you know, probably old news. I would say these are the numbers coming out at the end of 2019, early 2020. These numbers probably going to go way higher when the new numbers come out early 2021. And a lot of them, I would say, are not even reported because when you have a hack, a lot of companies probably don't want to share that information. They don't want to report to Homeland Security. They don't want to report it to, you know, law enforcement, afraid that, you know, that may create some bad news, some bad publicity. So you can kind of take these numbers with a grain of salt. It's probably underreported. Average 2244 hacking attempts a day. So this is, again, a number. It's generated by different kind of people, right? It could be state-sponsored, it could be organized crime, it could be people working out of a garage. You know, because of the proliferation of internet, you know, you name it, YouTube, whatever. It's so easy that you can find ways, you can find tutorials how to do hacking, how do you run scanning. You know, a lot of things are available in YouTube these days, right? So you can learn it easily. 71% of the breaches were financially motivated, 25% motivated by espionage. As you can imagine, a lot of the information we are sharing these days are on the internet. You know, you share with a web application, you share it with somebody online, right? It's not like the old days. You have to fill in a form, mail it in, and then it's only on hard copies. It's very, very rare that information is now only on hard copies. 38 13-day breaches exposing this. Again, this number is pretty, I would say, very conservative. Maybe I would say more like 3 times more, you know, underreported. Average cost of the breach is $3.9 million. So the cost of the breach is, you know, you can see that, oh, okay, it's that dollar amount. Maybe it's the cost to replace the environment, reloading the operating system database, whatever. But, you know, of course, there's an intangible to it. What about the cost of, you know, for example, if that news is public, if you're a public company, the stock probably would go way down, right? That is not even a number included in this number. If you have to pay for any damages, maybe it's included in here, which I highly doubt it because some of the lawsuits are going to drag on for many, many years. The average time to identify a breach was 206 days. Actually, I have another slide following this one to talk about that. In a little bit more time just to give you some background on that. Average time from when a hacker gained access to one system to when they access other system on the network is under 10 hours. So this is a very key point because as a hacker, just like a car thief, they want to generate no noise. They want to leave no audit trails. A lot of times they would just, when they get in, they don't want to do anything. They just want to sit there and wait. Wait for what? Wait for any signals that, hey, have I been detected? Have I been maybe honeypot, we call it? Am I getting into a place where the company is wanting me to get into so that they can detect me? So they most likely, they don't even want to do anything until they know, I'm not detected. Now I want to pivot out. I want to go laterally to other places to get information. And then the last one is Internet of Things. I don't know if you have heard of that term, Internet of Things. This is a new term, probably came out in 2018 or so, 2017. A lot of the devices we're wearing these days, or Fitbits, iWatch, you name it, they have the ability to get information from your database, from your whatever you may be remotely. So they become also an ingress point for your users to get information as well as the bad guys. So 5,200 attacks per month. That again number is kind of low. So this is a life cycle, so I'm not going to kind of walk you through these in details, but I just want to give you a life cycle that what you can expect. Again, this is not the same case every single case, but an average, right? So an attacker, they will scan your network, they will try to get in, call it looking at your ingress points. Maybe they will do a parking lot attack. Again, on YouTube you can download some tools and do a drive-by, looking at your neighbors' access points, Wi-Fi access points, and see what you can get into. I'm not recommending it, okay? I'm just saying that, there are tutorials out there in YouTube that you can actually download. So there are certain protocols that you don't want to use. As a side note, on your Wi-Fi access point, they are not very secure. And then if they break in, hey, within 9 hours average, sometimes as fast as 20 minutes if they're using a weak protocol, right? They get in, okay, they sit there. Within 4 hours, we will most likely find out where's my target, where's the flag, because it's almost like capturing the flag kind of game. Within 13 hours, we find out where we want to go, and then within 16 hours, they will start copying data if they wanted to, right? Now, how long would it take an organization to find out that they have a breach? 203 days. Why is there such a big gap? Because a lot of the companies these days, they may not have the resources, they may not have the diligence to install what we call these tools, for example, called intrusion prevention system, intrusion detection system, SIEM solution, security incident event management system, to detect any kind of abnormal activities. If they don't know what have been breached, they would just say, oh, everything is normal, until maybe they get a call from FBI, maybe they get a call from Homeland Security, law enforcement agency, or credit card companies. Hey, we trace something back to your company. Then they find out. So there's sometimes a big gap between when they were actually breached to the point that when they find out they have been breached. So this is 203 days in average, especially for the medium to small organizations. If you don't have these mechanisms, bells and whistles, alarms in place, you may not even know. Hopefully you will talk to IT people and say, hey guys, do we have these mechanisms in place to detect? Well, we don't think we're going to have people accessing our information 2 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m. in the morning. Somebody in the Far East, somebody in the other part of the world. We only allow North American people residing here to access information. So these are abnormal patterns. Hopefully you have a mechanism to detect and then question why and then stop them. And then of course the containment, that could take a lot longer. A lot of times when you have been breached, nothing you can do. You cannot fix it, so to speak, because you don't know what kind of cookies, Trojan horse, malware they have already planted. The only way sometimes is to reinstall everything, wipe everything out. Hopefully you have a good backup, and then you can contain it, so to speak. If not, it could be a long, long year for you. Okay? Okay. So the other thing is focusing on this year, as I mentioned before, the data now is probably gone even higher. 80%, 85% of the folks are working remotely now after COVID has started. Everybody's using some sort of, hopefully, VPN. You're not using some of the not very secure protocol, remote desktop or something like that without authentication. You're using some kind of remote tokens, two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication to authenticate people, not only your employees, maybe your users, maybe your customers, maybe your clients, right? Many of the devices that normally that don't leave your corporate environment, now they have to leave the environment. Why? Because as you can imagine, the folks that you have, they may have to take them home. You know, how many of you are issuing 100% company-issued laptops, desktops to your users? Maybe not, right? Maybe only a portion of it have company-issued laptops, and they have to use their own home computers to access that information. So in other words, how do you know they have the latest definition of the antivirus? How do you know their home Wi-Fi access points have the most secure protocols? As you know, I'm using the home access points, and hopefully you understand that there are multiple protocols you can use. Sometimes you don't even have to use a password, right? You can leave it wide open, and then some of the protocols with the right tools you can crack it within 20 seconds, right? And then people can be driving by. You know, one way you can tell just very quickly if your traffic is slowing down big time. I don't know if you can see it. If you know how to see it, then there's something wrong with it. You better look into it, right? Vulnerable systems that were exposed but only used minimally are utilized more. So some of the systems that may not be even used before, for example, imaging system, for example, your RDP, remote desktop protocol, some of the remote troubleshooting may not be used before because before COVID, a lot of users, majority of them are on site, so people can walk up to the desk and fix it. Now, you know what? They have remote, so all these protocols, all these devices or mechanisms to get to the machines or data will be in use. So making those targets more visible to the bad guys, right? So this is, again, nothing new. You know, the auditors know, the bad guys know, hey, a lot of people working remotely. If they're working remotely, there must be a way how they get to the information they need to do their job. So those become ingress points and also the attack points that we're going to follow up with. Ongoing attacks. Let me also bring up the notes here. So attackers are very opportunistic. Like I mentioned before, they are very patient. You know, when we do our review, right, we're giving a budget. We're giving, hey, you got to get it done within 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Guess what? The attackers, they don't have a budget. They don't have a timing. They're not going to notify, hey, I'm ready to start my hacking attempt at 2 a.m. Are you ready? They're not going to tell you, right? So when we do our attempts, they know. Our clients know. But when the bad guys do, they don't. So they will leverage any kind of instability, any kind of surprise factors to improve their odds of success. You know, so there are a lot more dangerous websites pop up. We call them the rogue access websites. They imitate, for example, Citibank websites. You know, so depending on which company, you have to be very proactively look for these rogue websites to make sure nobody are impersonating, spoofing your websites. Right? Phishing emails are very rampant these days. You get a ton of them. Everybody gets a ton of them. You know, I call it the humans are always the weakest link. You know, you can program a firewall, you can program a tool the way it is, and then it'll behave the same way forever, right? But humans, no. You know, one day they can behave this way, the other day, hey, they get an email, they get a free Starbucks coupon. They are very, very happy to click on certain things, right? Attacking, targeting VPN devices, remote access portals have increased. As you can imagine, this is you know, if you break it down, they can get in and get to the trophy, get to the flag. And a lot of this information is very valuable. A credit card, it's $5 a pop. They can put up 1 million of them, no cost of goods sold, a lot of them. Healthcare information, you know, a live person, maybe $10 per ID. Dead person is $100 per person. They can put up on dark web and sell them easily. Attacks on cloud system, its configurations, again, very rampant. A lot of us are using the cloud, AWS, Microsoft Azure. They are by default, depending on what you're buying, they are not secure, right? You have to make sure you configure them securely, making sure you use the right protocols, making sure you use the right hardening procedures. If not, they're pretty wide open. So as big as Capital One, a few months ago, a year ago, they didn't do it right. Guess what? It was proliferated. That leak was, everybody can see it. Okay, moving on.
So Francis, if I could just interject, so I'm scared now. You got me sufficiently scared. There's risk out there. What do I do about it? What do you recommend if I'm sitting in an accounting department of a contractor today, listening to this presentation? What's my first call? What do I do?
Well, you need to talk to your IT. Okay, you need to talk to your IT. No bulletproof solution. Everybody can do something. The main thing of some of these attacks is you want to put up as many hurdles for the bad guys as possible, right? They are just like car thieves. They don't want to alert anybody. They don't want an alarm to go off. So the more you put up, they will move on to the next target. So, looking at the training for the people, that's important. So I may as well go on to the next one, right? So training for people, like I said, humans are always the weakest link. Security awareness training would be good. And then looking at some of these biannual vulnerability assessment, pen testing, it will strengthen your environment. It's not the only thing, but those are the basic steps you need to do. Cybersecurity insurance, tone at the top, all these are very important.
Francis, as I've talked with some of my clients, at times they've shared with me that they have some testing that they do, either penetration testing, or they even are testing their employees by sending kind of phishing type emails, things like that. What are some best practices as far as that human element testing that and using IT folks to help evaluate systems?
Yeah, good question. So, like I said, humans are not machines, so you cannot really program them. So some of these phishing attempts and social engineering attempts, they are a good way to alert your folks, the human beings, that hey, whether they are designed by management or they are real, you got to watch out for any kind of attempts, whether it's phone call, email, or walk-in attempts. Sometimes some of the bad guys will use all three to make their chances of getting in higher. So, I would say doing these social engineering attempts at least maybe once per year. Don't make it a pattern. Hey, every July we'll do it. People are going to say, oh, okay, same thing again. Try to see if you can, do something maybe sometimes in March, sometimes in June, and change up on the script, change up on the way that you try them so that they are more alert. The way I call it is you're not testing a configuration. You're testing the alertness of the people. So, try to do the best you can to surprise people and make it more as lifelike as possible. Okay?
That makes sense. I'm sure that I've seen those in our organization where there are phishing attempts that are coming across my radar screen daily. Also, it feels like, and I don't think they're Moss Adams generated, but they're definitely out there and they're definitely a risk. So, thanks, Francis. Great ideas. We have one question from Nigel, real quick. Maybe you could touch on just real quickly. You made a reference to the dark web. What is the dark web?
Yeah, it's a term that we use. This is where a lot of these websites, they will share hackers' information. We know how to find them. Some of these dark webs will share information about how to get into certain companies. You can do a search, and then there may be people have luck in getting in certain areas. And then some of these dark webs will actually offer credit card information, healthcare information, sensitive information for sale. So it's not somebody that you want to kind of, traverse and take a browse, and I wouldn't recommend it. And then these are the people that are not even here in the U.S. They will, kind of almost offer hacking as a service. So there's a lot of information in it, and then sometimes we'll do some research in these webs and see, hey, if this is a company, ABC company, we're engaging to do a pen test, we'll see if we can find any intelligence about this company, ABC, from, these dark webs and see, well, let me harvest some information. Maybe somebody has already done something, and ABC company does not even know they have been breached. So, okay.
All right. Thank you, Francis. With that, we're going to move into our third polling question as we transition to Mr. Glenn Wattum. Our question here for polling is, have you requested a PPP loan? And if so, have you submitted your PPP loan for forgiveness? Answers are yes, we got the loan and have submitted for forgiveness. Yes, we got the loan, but we didn't submit yet. And the third possible response is nope, we did not obtain a PPP loan. So as we get ready to dive into Glenn's presentation, we'll be talking a little bit more about PPP loans, the current status of things. I'm assuming, Glenn, you checked this morning and it's changed since we started this presentation.
Yes, Aaron, I think it probably has. And so many questions around it and uncertainty around it, and you get more questions than answers, it seems like, with this. So for anybody to be called an expert in PPP, it's kind of questionable to begin with.
All right, here's our results. Glenn, you want to take it?
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting. Almost half the folks did not get a PPP loan, which at the time I understood that I had talked to a number of businesses. And a lot of it was with the uncertainty around it at the time as what was going to go with whether it was going to be paid back or whether it was not. And it could actually also be related to, I would think, just operations. Where are you going to be? So that's an interesting result there. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit now. All right, so cash flow planning. It seems like whenever we get into a strained economic time, and we're clearly in one now, this kind of bubbles back up to the surface, meaning cash flow management, and that it's always a critical element of any business, and it's really critical in tough economic times. What's interesting about this time, we've gone through this before with the SARS outbreak in 2003 and 2007 and 8 with the recession credit crunch. But what seems different about this time was the magnitude and the uncertainty. You had the uncertainty, with the COVID breakout as to what is essential, what is not, how long is it going to be before we open back up the economy. How do we respond to it? And some businesses will respond differently, obviously. If you're in a restaurant space, you probably really moved over to delivery type business. Some other businesses in the construction space, you're impacted now that we are opening back up by some of the safety standards that are in place. But the point being on this is that cash flow management, cash flow is really the lifeblood of the business. And when the economy is going along strong and the money is flowing, we tend to take our eye off the ball and maybe not focus as much as on cash flow as we should. And it's really, really critical. It's ultimately, in my opinion, is what drives it, what we're really in the business for. So when we talk about cash flow fundamentals, I want to take a look at a couple things here. And the first item I would say is that's not even on the screen here is I would want to start with a balance sheet. And in particular, I'd want to understand and I want to look at and see how strong the business is when we look at our working capital as a starting point, when we look at our debt to equity as a starting point, just to see how strong we are to begin with is a critical element. And then I also would want to start to begin to look at the impact of any forecasts on operations, on what we expected. So we started the year maybe 2020, and we were targeting maybe 25 million of revenue. But then we came around to March, and we got into the shutdown, and maybe we started getting calls from some of our owners, and so our contracts started to slide. They may be delayed, or they may even have been canceled. And so then we had to quickly react to that. And in reacting to that, you really want to see what that does just as a starting point to your budget. Because the budget on your operating statements, the impact on your CapEx, and what's going on with your banking relationship, those are all critical. So you take that initial assessment as to where we're standing, And we really look at updating our operating budget to see what the year is going to look like, because as we'll find out, what that operating budget, budget looks like and whether it's profitable or not, that will ultimately drive much of our cash. And so when we look at this, when we look at the fundamentals of it, we really have three key areas to really concentrate on. The operations side of it is key, and that's really basically our working capital, and that will largely be driven by profitability and our ability to accelerate the collection of our cash and our receivables in that, and maybe get favorable terms in how we pay our bills, our payables to operate the business. That line, when you go look at your annual cash flow statement, that line is a key to your financial statement. Are we doing a positive or negative cash flow? So you'll want to, as we get into this, look at steps that you can drive that positive. That's key. Then when we get down to the investment side of it, that's what we're doing with our cash. Doing with our cash, and that's typically our CapEx policies, or are we investing in a new division or other long-lived assets? And then when you move down to the financing side of it, it's where are we getting our long-term financing from? Are we getting it from equity, or are we getting it from partnering with banks or other sources of financing? And the key here is we obviously want all of these to be positive if possible, but the key when you start looking at like your investment side of it, which are your long-term assets, your long-term assets in that, you want those, you do not want to finance those typically out of operations. So in other words, what does that mean? Well, if I'm looking at I need a new adjustment in my fleet, maybe I need 4 or 5 new vans, it looks like I got a fair amount of cash, but you don't want to finance out of cash. You need that cash for operations, and so you'd want to line up that investment activity with your financing activity. So if I'm going to buy a truck, which an equipment which is typically going to take a longer term to impact the cash flow of the business, I want to finance with an appropriate level of debt that I have in the financing side of it, which would be a bank or other source of capital to line that up. So that is really kind of the critical element to that. And so to keep your investment at kind of the investment in equipment and investment in divisions and investment in expansion at kind of a net zero, we want to look at matching the financing of the investment, matching the life of the asset with the financing, which is coming from either the debt or equity on that end of it. And then, of course, when we get down to the financing side of it, largely what we'll see on that is just if we go look at our debt terms. That's quite often it's our debt terms, but then it's also our distribution strategy for our equity. Like, for instance, if you're an S-Corp, like this is something that you don't really ever see on the balance sheet, but you want to have this really well integrated into your cash flow planning is like, what are my planned distributions? And my planned distributions for taxes, my planned distributions for just for regular distributions, and you want that also incorporated into the cash flow planning. So all these elements really need to be carefully paid attention to and thought about strategically as we're looking at cash flow planning. So that is kind of the fundamental side of where we want to look. Now let's kind of dive into a little bit more on how we would go about this. So when we talk about cash flow budgeting and modeling, really, again, it would start with an appropriate operations budget. Like you want to take a look at what's my budget for my income statement, my P&L, and if we're in a contracting space, we want to understand any changes to our job schedules or our contracts that are there, and the impact on our profit and loss statement first. We want to understand that because then that is going to go drive the cash flow. And then from there, you'll build your cash flow model. And again, typically what I would look at is probably a 4-week and, a midterm, like a month out. and then 2 and 3 and maybe as far as 6 months out on your cash flow modeling is what I'd be looking at. But most of the clients that I see that use is about that period. And in that end, you want to build into that the impact from your investment side of it with, the impact on your line of credit, on your cash, and you want to also understand where your line of credit is, particularly if you're in a contracting phase and maybe you're coming out of a job and you're just down to your retention and you're in a phase where you have a startup phase of the work where there's a lot of front end costs but not a lot of collections. You want to have that succinctly built into your forecast so that you can see the impact on your credit. It ultimately can impact your bonding if you have bonding needs as well. So that's critical to it. And then when we talk about a dynamic budget, what we're really referring to there is it needs to be able to be fluid and updated, meaning that we go to 4 weeks out and timing of maybe some collections or retention change, we want to be able to update it and change it. And what I say here on this is more where actually the accounting and the finance world is moving to is more just-in-time information. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate because we're predicting the future. So the more important thing is to get the information in there. And I know it's kind of scary to hear an accountant say this, but just get it in there because we're projecting the future and get it projected so we can see the impact on our cash, we can see the impact on our line of credit, and we can update it quickly. Then as far as tools, again, I'd say a couple things. One, you've got the mechanical tool, which a lot of businesses use is Excel or some other spreadsheet application. But then the other tool that's integrated, I would say, is the budgets that we got, the operating budgets. And then the other piece that I would think that would be building into this is actually, at least for contractors, is our project management meeting and understanding the impact of the jobs as they make their way through it and understanding any information that comes out, carefully linked information coming from our project management that is going to be built into our budget and built into our cash forecast, particularly like as jobs change, as we're looking at cash collections, if we're encouraging that the cash collections element should be an important piece, I think, of your project management on the jobs, cash collection and as we're paying the bills. So those are some of the pieces that we're looking at when we're forecasting. Again, get a proper budget in place, including your admin expenses, and look at your variable expenses. What has been impacted by this pandemic? I know for us, this is the first day I've been in the office in 3 months. So translation on that, a lot of costs have shifted for our business as we operate differently. Our transportation costs have shifted, our overhead costs have shifted on space costs and all that. Really understand your operating costs on the shift, but even more importantly, look at what you can do to impact your variable costs. And those may be different for different businesses, but really take a deep dive into your administrative overhead and your variable costs. Okay, so then the last piece I'll click on to here is just the PPP loan. And so I guess this is for half the audience, because it looks like half the audience got it. But there's a couple key elements on here. One, when the loans were with the CARES Act came out, there was a big discussion on what to do with who should get the loan and the certificate of need. And so that was a key element of it. Do I need the money? And there was a certification process that goes along with that. And if you sign this under the penalty of perjury that you need the money, and that created a lot of hubbub and a lot of questions around that. And so what they did is they kind of backed it down and they said, any loan over $2 million, we're going to look at it. Any loan under $2 million, the immediate assumption is that because of the size you meet the need requirement, and you're going to be less concerned about that. But for loans over $2 million, now what they've come out with in this area, and I apologize, I should actually say Form 3509, and I encourage you, for those of you with loans over that, to go get that form. You can find it on the web. very easily. It's a questionnaire form that is coming from the SBA that's going to be issued, going to be sent from your bank, and if you have a loan over $2 million, that you'll need to respond to in 10 days. And it asks liquidity questions, it asks operation questions, and it asks basically your response to COVID questions or operations related to that. And you'll want to be really prepared for that. That'll be critical because, again, as we go down to these last few bullet points, the forgiveness won't matter because if you don't meet that standard, they say you didn't need the loan and you're going to have to repay it. So pay very careful attention to the certificate of need and particularly the information on that Form 3509. Then, as you're now working through forgiveness, you want to take very careful. You'll want to pay real close attention to this because basically any loan forgiveness ends up in equity, and so you'll want to look very careful at the use of funds and whether it takes 8 or 24 weeks to maximize the forgiveness. And then just the timing on this. The timing is once you submit forgiveness, the bank has 60 days, SBA has 90 days, and what I would say on that is documentation. Do whatever the bank is asking for the documentation. The last piece is tax. And on tax, the one thing I think you talk to your advisors on is the treatment of the expenses for the PPP loans. Currently, they're talking about making those non-deductible, which means to the extent you're getting full forgiveness, the expenses you incurred would be non-deductible. That's the position the IRS took. Congress is challenging it. Hopefully that's going to come around and change, but that could have a substantial impact on your tax costs, even if your loan's 100% forgiven. So make sure you're paying attention to that and getting good advice on that. Aaron, I see we're towards the end here, so I'll wrap it up right now.
Yeah, great, Glenn. Thank you. I know that as we talked about early on in the presentation, the PPP area is a dynamic area. We're seeing a lot of clients fielding questions and having interactions related to PPP loans. If you have questions, if you want to know more about that, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help. We'd be happy to compare notes. We're gathering information as we go as well. As we bring this to a close, we'll do our final polling question. So, Gerald, if you could bring that up for us. We're in the lightning round now, folks, so I'm not going to keep this open too long, but as you prepare for 2021, what presents the biggest challenge for your business? A, projected revenue decreases, B, liquidity, C, qualified labor, D, other. So just give you 3 or 4 more moments here to complete that survey and get your answer submitted. All right, Gerald, let's see what we got. All right, so 49% are facing decreases in revenue, and that's not a surprise for what we're seeing in our client base as well. So I think as you evaluate those decreases in revenue, cash flow management and liquidity, which is the 16% of our response, is a huge factor here. Managing that cash, as Glenn was talking about, protecting it as that's your lifeline as you go through uncertain times. As we bring this to a close, I wanted to just share with you a quick slide of how you can reach our presenters. So Jode, Francis, and Glenn will all be happy to field any questions you might have, anything you'd like to collaborate with respect to. And as we close out today, I want to thank all of you that have attended our Building Opportunities conference this year. Obviously, it's in a different format than it has been in the past, but with the 8 sessions we've had really good response. And as you're thinking about next year and you're completing our survey, we really want to hear from you what you liked, what you didn't like, areas that maybe we didn't cover that we could cover next time. We take the feedback very seriously. It's the first thing we evaluate when we start thinking about our next conferences. So it's your chance to touch us and let us know what you'd like to hear more about. With that, Gerald, I'll throw it to you.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everyone, for attending the session. In a few moments, we will have a webcast survey being pushed out to your web browser. We will also have this survey available via link in a follow-up email for all attendees here. As a quick reminder, All of the previous sessions from the Building Opportunity Conference are going to be posted to mossadams.com as on-demand recordings in case you wanted to view any of them or missed any of them from before. On behalf of the presenting team here, Aaron, Jody, Francis, and Glenn, as well as the rest of the practice here at Moss Adams, thank you again, and we hope to see you at a future event very soon. Have a great day, everybody.